Okay, let's go over the top three market movers for August 8th. Number one is Friday's jobs report. Number two is the Inflation Reduction Act passes the Senate. And number three, the CPI report comes out on Wednesday. All right, Friday's jobs report was an astounding 528,000 jobs were created in July, which doubled the estimate at 250,000 jobs. So it was about 35% higher than the last 4 months, and about 10% lower than what we saw in 2021. But it was an amazing number at 528,000. So the Fed now will probably raise interest rates by 75 basis points at their next FOMC meeting on September 21st. But something doesn't sound right. What's in the numbers? And so we went behind the numbers to find out. Well, what we found out is these weren't good jobs, right? We actually lost 71,000 full-time jobs, and we gained 384,000 part-time jobs, and people that have multiple jobs went up 92,000. So what's in the numbers? Not great jobs, okay? Now with all the kids going back to school here this month, I'm estimating that we're probably going to drop below 400 and maybe even touch 300 come August. So we shall see, but keep an eye out for a drop in jobs coming next month. All right, number two is the Inflation Reduction Act, which basically was the slimmed down version of the Build Back Better bill that didn't pass last year. Well, it passed the Senate and now heads to the House on Friday. Some of the main components were it was the largest climate investment in history at $400 billion, and that's for EV, for tax credits back to cars, to solar panels, things along those lines. Now, the IRS also had its largest funding ever at $80 billion, 87,000 agents over the next 10 years. Well, this puts the IRS bigger than the Pentagon, the Department of State, the FBI, and the Border Patrol combined. So a large funding to the IRS. I'll leave it at that. A creation of a 15% corporate minimum tax rate, which will now tax corporations making over $1 billion in income. And that's like ExxonMobil, Amazon, Nike, Bank of America, Ford, some of the largest companies out there will now start to get a tax. And I'm hoping and praying that they don't pass that on down to us in the form of higher inflation. We can just hope. The next one is prescription drugs. Medicare will now be able to negotiate prescription drugs for about 10, but that won't happen until 2026, but a win's a win. The next one is the Affordable Care Act will now be able to extend their subsidies and give help to about 3.1 million people that have the Affordable Care Act. But what's in a name? Okay, the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, Democrat Bernie Sanders came out on Saturday while they were voting and said, according to the CBO, this bill will in fact have minimal impact on inflation. The taxfoundation.org also came out prior to this bill and said it will actually reduce GDP moving forward. So you have a bill that's actually reducing growth, and it's not affecting or reducing inflation. So a more appropriate name would have probably been a climate change and IRS bill 2022, not the Inflation Reduction Act. But I digress. All right, number three is the CPI report, and that comes out on Wednesday. Now, last month, if you remember, we were at 9.1. This month, we're coming in lower at 8.7, at least that's the estimate. And that's because of oil prices. Oil and gas have come down, so that will probably bring down the headline number, but the core inflation, which excludes energy and food, is rising. They see that going up to 6.1. So again, that's why the Fed will probably raise 75 basis points heading into next month's meeting. So they've got to fight off this inflation, even though oil prices have come down.